Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son.
Hi, I'm Mick Garris, and we're here to take an inside look at Animal House with the film's director, John Landis. John made his directorial debut at the age of 21 with a film called Schlock, and since then he has done the Kentucky Fried Movie, National Lampoon's Animal House, and is now working on the Blues Brothers movie. John, good to have you with us here. First, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how National Lampoon's Animal House came to be.
Well, Matty Simmons is the publisher of the Lampoon, and he was in sort of partnership with a man named Ivan Reitman, who's called the Canadian Roger Corman, which means he too makes schlock. And he was hustling Matty. He said, Matty, I really think that the National Lampoon should make a feature film. And they came to Hollywood and they got development money, and they hired Doug Kenny and Harold Ramis, two very gifted writers, to write a script. I understand the first script was going to be Charles Manson in high school, but that didn't pan out too funny, you know. And I could see them in the Black Tower going, you know. Anyway, but then Chris Miller became involved, and Chris is another writer for the Lampoon. Doug, by the way, is one of the founders of the National Lampoon, who was at the Harvard Lampoon, and it's all very preppy and Ivy League. And Chris had written stories called Stories from the Adelphian Lodge, which were based on his fraternity days.
And these ran in the Lampoon magazine.
Right, Lampoon magazine, and they were very popular, and they decided we'll make a movie about fraternities. And they wrote a number of scripts before I was involved. And then, this is the truth, I mean, the script girl on Kentucky Fried Movie, the continuity person, is Catherine Wooten, who was also on Animal House and now just finished Blues Brothers with me, very talented. And at that time, she was the girlfriend of Sean Daniel, who is now the vice president of Universal Pictures, but at that time was, hey, kid! You know, he was a production person. And he was handed this script that had multiple, you know, had a lot of urinating in it and throwing up and just a generally funny script, you know, in the studio go, here. And Sean, well, actually, Catherine would come home every day and say, well, today we had a naked girls chained up with a little midget in a clown suit beating them, and big black muscle men and karate killers, and Sean's going, what is this movie?
This was on Kentucky Fried movie.
And so he saw Kentucky Fried, literally before it was released. He saw my cut of it, too, of Kentucky Fried, and I was hired to develop Animal House because the script needed work. And in fact, that was interesting, because what they proposed to me was, would you like to rewrite it or hire other writers? And I said, well, who are these three guys? And because I must say that the script was hysterically funny. I mean, really made you laugh aloud, which is very unusual. However, it was pretty brutal, and the Deltas were assholes, and I just didn't feel you could watch a movie about assholes. I might be wrong, but I didn't want to make one, and so they had to become more sympathetic, and I worked with the three writers, all of whom, by the way, Harold Ramis, Doug Kenny, and Chris Miller, all of whom were in college, in fraternities, in 1962. And so there's a great wealth of experience there.
Well, that's another impressive thing about the film is, as a period picture, it
portrays...
You're welcome, John. It portrays 1962 very accurately. The whole look of it, the costumes, everything. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, just before we did this, he said, well, what do you want to talk about? And I said, mention what a good period picture.
And I got the $5.
Right. No. Yes, in fact, that was a lot of work, and I'm real pleased with it, because it was a very low-budget picture. And the art director, John Lloyd, and the costume designer, Deborah Nadulman, and everybody just did a terrific job, and the picture really is a good period picture. We went to a lot of trouble. People don't, I mean, the phone booths were different. There was no master charge then. So every store didn't have a master charge. I mean, it was very different looking, and yet it was similar. And it's real hard. I told you to say that, but it's true. I mean, it's always bothered me that no one's ever acknowledged that it's 1962 and very accurate.
Well, I must say, I thought that at the time, in addition to being prompted a little bit. But another thing about the film is that it's really well made. It's a well-made, well-directed picture, and that often is not a credit to you in the reviews. The reviews were not very good on
Oh, they
the
were
film.
lousy. They were lousy. Newsweek gave us an okay review, but most of the reviews were real mediocre and worse.
Does that bother you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said it didn't bother me, but it's odd thing with the critics. I don't think they know what they're talking about most of the time, so it's not just me. I mean, a case in point is a movie's out now called Coal Miner's Daughter, which is directed by a friend named Michael Apted. It's a wonderful movie.
Right.
It really is. And all the reviews praise Sissy Spacek's performance and Tommy Lee Jones, rightfully so, because they're wonderful. And very few of them say anything about Michael.
That's
and
right.
I'm going, well, what was he doing there? I mean, it's an odd thing. I don't know. The thing about Animal House in reviews that was odd was that Animal House was sort of this movie, How Are You? And it became this huge hit, which was quite surprising to me, too. I mean, it's a monstrous hit. I mean, it's like the 5th highest grossing film of all time. And so suddenly, from being this sort of, well, obnoxious comedy, the same critics, I went and took, I have them, the same critics who didn't like it would later refer to it as a role model to follow, which is kind of like, well, who are these? It's like when I remember Time Magazine, their famous thing, they reviewed Bonnie and Clyde, hated it. And then by the end of the year, it was on the cover as this important work of art.
10 Best Pictures.
Yeah.
What do you feel about the role model that Animal House has become with comedies? Everything is now another Animal House, hopefully.
Well, I don't know. It's very flattering that people want to make an Animal House kind of thing, but it's disturbing that no one seems to understand why Animal House worked, because the rip-offs tend to be very brutal and obnoxious and stupid, which I believe Animal House isn't. I think the level of intelligence and wit in the script is very ingrained. I mean, Harold and Doug and Chris are not dumb guys, and I think the movie's rather sweet, and I think that the Deltas are genuinely sympathetic. And people, I said, the example is people always talk about the food fight. You always hear, the food fight, Animal House, and the food fight's one shot. That's like, I don't know, 4 seconds of screen time. Food flies in the air and cut. And yet you always hear about the food fight. I don't know.
What you're working on now is the Blues Brothers movie, and you brought with us a teaser trailer that's playing in the theaters now, I believe.
Right.
And let's take a look at that. Can we get that rolling now?
Well, what are you guys going to do? The same act? You wear the same Focaccia suits? You'll scare people away. Thank you.
You are such a disappointing pair.
I'm going to become a priest.
You contemptible pig.
You gotta learn not to talk to nuns that way.
White men, white women, the swastika is calling you.
How, how.
No problem.
Back to that same old place, sweet home, Chicago.
It's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses.
Hit it.
Do you see the light? They're not gonna catch us. We're on a mission from God.
You just tell us where they are, and there'll be no trouble.
Use of unnecessary violence in the apprehension of the Blues Brothers has been approved.
Are you the police?
No, ma'am. We're musicians.
That looks awfully spectacular.
In fact, the teaser doesn't, it's meant to tease. It's an enormous movie. We deliberately kept it a secret. In fact, that's another thing about the press. I mean, because we told them they couldn't come visit us, the incredible misinformation that's printed about the movie is amazing. But it is an enormous movie. It has huge musical numbers. And it's a musical. And I'm very excited about it. I really am. We're mixing it now.
Didn't Universal have some discomfort when they saw the teaser?
I think they would have liked it to be, you know, those wacky, crazy guys with their wacky, crazy music. I don't know. I think that, I don't know, that it's playing in theaters, and we finished the trailer. The movie is rather unique, and I hope that, so I'm in an odd position to talk about it now because no one's seen it but me, you know, and, but I'm thrilled with it. It has an extraordinary cast: Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, Cab Calloway, James Brown, Carrie Fisher, Henry Gibson, John Candy, John Lee Hooker, obviously John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, and the Blues Brothers Band, and
they're all great musicians.
Oh yes, oh yeah. Oh.
I mean, they've been on all the great R&B records.
Oh.
Duck Dunn, Steve Cropper.
Steve Cropper wrote "Dock of the Bay." I mean, oh yeah, it's real. It's amazing. I'm very excited about the movie. It's odd. It's sort of, I want to cross Ben-Hur with Singing in the Rain. You know, it's quite large.
We got less than a minute left, and I do want to touch on what you're doing after the Blues Brothers.
I'm going to London, and in January of '81, I'm making a film called An American Werewolf in London, which is exciting for me because by then it will be 12 years old.
Right, you wrote this at the age of 19.
19, yeah, and it's something I've always wanted to do, and I'm now because of Animal House, I can now do it.
Is it a comedy horror film?
I don't know, it's rather undefinable. It happens to be truly funny, but it is definitely not a comedy. It is genuinely scary. I hope, an English director named J. Lee Thompson said the nicest thing about the script. He said it was laughing over your shoulder humor, and I said, what's that? He said, you know, sort of, you know.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for being with us, John, and good luck on the Blues Brothers and everything to follow that. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Nick.